So I'm sure that at some point in time,
Okay, this is the Williamson County Board of Commissioners meeting, May 18th, 2021. It's 10:02 a.m. Roll call, please.
Jim Marlowe.
Present.
Bert Gentry.
Present.
Tim Atkinson.
Present.
Okay. A couple different things we need to talk about today. First one would be the economic development position, the discussion under new business. We know that Celeste is going to be leaving, and thought to go ahead and discuss this with, I know I've asked Ashley to be here because at one time Ashley had made a comment about, or asked me about, do we want him to take over the position? Well, this is what we want to discuss.
Well, I'm not asking that I want to do it. That's why I just want to know if I'm going to be stuck.
That's what I meant.
That's, you know.
Okay, well, let me just clarify, he just approached me with it, and that's why we decided to discuss this. And, or do we want to hire someone for this position? Personally, I think that, I think she brings in quite a few grants to this position. I mean, my personal opinion is we hire somebody to replace Celeste. I don't know what you guys, your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Maybe part-time to just see how it fills out.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's unfortunate we can't keep Celeste on somehow, you know, but with IMRF, I don't think there's any way you can, you know, just what she can do some stuff for us because she can only do one, she explained to me one thing, not all the stuff she does. I would think the situation, budget, not knowing what budget's gonna do, I think maybe if you get somebody in here, maybe get them 3 days a week and see how they go, maybe they could possibly work them into a full-time position down the road. Would make sense to me. I mean, it's just my opinion, but that way you keep from having to pay all the benefits and see if they can do it 3 days a week. And they can possibly bring them in later on, but remember, when you hire somebody, you've got them forever at position. So that's my only 2 cents.
No, I'm not a position, a contract position.
That's what I was thinking.
No.
Can
No,
we make
that's
it a
an actual
contract?
position. We tried to make that a contract. She didn't want to sign the contract.
But the new hire, we could make a
The
contract.
new hire, we
position,
could make it a contract.
Which is what I would want to see, a contract.
Now, they're
position.
here doing Blue Blazes going wild, good, and great. I mean, then you can throw in the full-time job you want, you know, and so, but me personally, I don't think I want to jump out there and do full-time right out of the gate. So they get their feet wet, know what they're doing, and see what happens.
I agree. I think it'd be good to just do it maybe like part-time, make it
Not really probationary,
You're
but
30.
something like.
What is 30 hours a week? What it is?
Well, I mean, to me, below IMRF standards, it's 1,000 hours.
Yeah, for the year.
So you just need to, I mean, you have to figure it up from that, but they would need to work less than 1,000 hours a year.
I didn't even have, not that my 2 cents matters, but I think with the economy like it is right now, you're gonna be hard pressed to find someone to take a job like that, part-time. Thank you, Andrew. Part-time for doing the job that she does and the amount of work that's right now currently pending.
Well, you could
Unless
also,
money.
you could also,
That's a good point.
on the grant stuff, you can also, there are people out there that would do that for you, that part of it.
Because unfortunately, you're getting ready to get a whole lot of grants handed to you and no one, a lot. Do you have any idea what is pending right now? At all?
Well, I know the Rebuild Illinois one, that's what I've been.
I mean, do you know what her job entails of right now that she has pending?
Off the top of our heads, probably not.
No, she came in today talking, but she didn't go over it with us.
You might want to look at what she has.
That's why we need to hear what she's going on.
Yeah.
You hear from her.
You might want to look and see what she has pending right now, and go from there.
Okay, well, this is just a preliminary discussion is all. We, you know, we said that we needed that.
I mean, I was just looking at the county as a whole, and, because if not, it's detrimental.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is, I think we're on board that we get someone in here, whether it be part-time, full-time.
If they prove themselves, and just than full-time.
And so
But I
that you
think
know
this
that
is
we're not
huge
looking
though.
at.
I don't think what you had,
Yeah.
what I'm saying though is this is huge. These are grants that you're talking about that can affect your fiscal, your financial part. So if you get somebody in your part-time that's gonna come upstairs and sit and do absolutely nothing, that knows nothing about grants, that can
Well, you're not
detrimentally.
gonna hire anybody
it's
because they don't
gonna
have about
hurt.
grants.
Well, I think.
They gotta know about grants.
I think the way to go about this too would be to put this out there for a grant writer with experience, and then we have the interview process. That would be my suggestion, to see what type of experience, who had what type of experience.
And it may be, you interview, and they may be so good, you may want to full-time allocate, but I think right now, I think just, we gotta walk where we run and, you know.
Okay.
I mean, I would say, you guys do need to talk with Celeste.
Well, absolutely.
What exactly,
Right.
because we, I mean, probably within the next couple of weeks, I mean, we should have that.
Right.
I mean, hardly, I mean, right now, we don't have hardly anything that we can use that for, except for possibly, you know, grants. And you have to have someone monitor that, put together an application, you know, and be able to at least act as the intermediary between you guys and the applicants. So
Well, here's the
that'll be
thing.
for 4 years.
Here's the thing, she's gonna be, I think she's coming in June. We need to do this rather quickly, Ms. Mayan here, and they need to shadow her. We've got a budget throughout the whole year, so we've got the money, bring somebody here to shadow her and pay them too, and let her explain what's going on, and then you do the 3 days of potential moving into a full-time job down the road. But at least see what they know. What she's playing here, and they work a month, they have no clue, still don't have to do what they're doing. You gotta start over again.
And I think on that too, I think it'd be good to have them come in every so often, let us know what's going on, you know, how are things going, you know, the status reports of pending grants, you know,
That's a huge
keep us
position.
updated on what's going on, you know, in her workload.
I'm just very leery of bringing somebody in full-time right out of the gate when they could just be an absolute dud to bring in here and not work out and come in a contractual deal or something. And so they really kind of prove themselves that they know what they're doing. Work with her a couple, 3 weeks.
So I know Celeste is on, but we're not really going to make any big decision right here. We're just trying to get an idea of the direction we want to go. So that's all.
At least we're on the same page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're on the same page.
At least we're on the same
And then we'll get with her, we'll get a job description and everything.
I think the
List of
Celeste
what she's doing.
interview process, Celeste needs to be there, just like we did
I would agree with that.
with Greg Smothers or whoever.
But
She could tell who's what around the gate.
Okay. So she'll be back next week,
So back
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. This is already set up, so we'll get with her. And we'll deal with that.
But when do we want to get the thing out? Written up and out, ready to go?
Okay.
We're running out of time. so-
we need to get it out as quick as possible.
But you need to, I mean, let her.
I think we need
It'll help us.
Yeah, I mean,
design.
because that way she can tell you the type of grants. You know, some people may be familiar with state grants, but not federal grants,
Right.
vice versa.
She has some
She does,
certifications
she
too, but
does
she
both,
doesn't have.
and, you know, so, you know, that's just, I'm sure there's whatever, certain acronyms or lingo or whatever that would help, so that people would
Just
say,
your-
yes, I've done that, or no, I don't have a clue.
Well, you said it, Kelly said it right, it's an important job, that's the point of starting out, let's see if they can handle it, and then work their way into part of the full-time position. I mean, you know, let's see.
Yeah. I can just say though, for a full-time, I mean, keep in mind, you guys made a comment, the number of grants, honestly, that position brings in pays for that position. I mean, just, you know, you got at least 3 in the state's attorney's office that, you know, that are received, those are either 80 or 100%, you know, grants, you know, for those. That, obviously, those positions would be here if she didn't. So that information.
Okay, so we'll, I'll make a point to talk to her tomorrow when she comes in, and then we'll set up another meeting, we'll let everybody know what's going on, and we'll just set another meeting to decide what we want as far as posting the job. So that way everybody will know what her job entails, and we'll work from there. Anybody else have any comment on that?
No, I'm not opposed full-time on this, I just want to make sure we
Well,
put
we
a person
need-
in there that knows what to do to prove yourself to us.
We need to be flexible. When we bring
Yeah.
people in, we might find somebody.
Now, they may walk in, be so powerful, that they have a full-time.
Exactly, right. So we just need the flexibility.
The, moving on, resolution for the Hands of Hope. Andrew?
Sure, I'm happy to provide an update on that. I met with Miss Norris, I believe it was not last week, the week before, on a Friday. We were able to speak with a gentleman from, I believe he was from IEMA, and discussed what role the county would have in attempting to try to perpetuate this grant for the Hands of Hope. And basically, we discovered two things. The first thing that was discovered was the main issue we talked about in the last meeting when Troy was here, was that Hands of Hope didn't have the legal responsibility in order to essentially feed the public. And so that's why they needed to pair with a government organization or an entity that did have that legal responsibility. At first, I didn't know if the county had that or not. It turns out, as Ms. Norris was able to point out, in our emergency operating procedures, there is a section in there that says during the time of a state emergency or something like that of that nature, that the county does have an obligation or a legal responsibility to provide food to the public. So that was step one. However, there's a second step to this that we wouldn't have learned if we didn't have that phone call. And so I really do appreciate you setting that up. The second step is that even though the county has the legal responsibility to do it, there has to be a link to Hands of Hope. And that link is that the county needs to specifically task Hands of Hope to fulfill that legal responsibility that the county has. The issue we have is, to this point, we have not done that, nor have we tasked any organization with fulfilling that legal responsibility for us. There is a way around that that may work, and that is that we could draft, and this board, if it so chose, could pass a resolution retroactive to task any organization, including Hands of Hope, with the responsibility to provide this type of aid and food to the public. And so that was the plan set forth, is that we would draft a resolution. I met with the chairman, and he tasked me in my office to draft that resolution. It is not ready at this time. I was in communication with Ms. Stephanie, I believe it was on Friday, and said that the earliest I possibly could have it would be the end of the day today. I do apologize. There have been other irons in the fire that have drawn my attention, and so I have not been able to get to drafting that resolution at this point. Not to make an excuse, but for the past 48 hours, I haven't had access to my work computer. Things are moving around in the state's attorney's office. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be in this position with the board, but that's one of the things that's delayed me. I would be hopeful that in the next 24 to 48 hours, I could have that resolution provided to the board. There's one note of caution here that I think is important to bring up, and that's that even if we do this, there's no guarantee that this gets approved. And one of the things that Ms. Norris told me about was that she submits these types of requests for reimbursement on behalf of the county all the time. And in fact, the day that I met with her, there was one that came back that was actually rejected. And it wasn't for a reimbursement for food or anything like that. It was for personal protective equipment, PPE. It was in the ballpark of about $6,500, and and it was rejected. Form rejection letter, just like Mr. Troy showed us at the last meeting. So I'm not very optimistic that the $76,000 that they're requesting will be received, unfortunately. It's a great organization. I hope that they receive the money. They do great work. And so we've decided to attempt to move forward with this and put forth the application and hope it gets done, and do everything that we can as the county, the sponsoring organization, if you will, to try to get that done. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Well, the good thing is that if they get it, they get it. They don't. At least we did our part to do everything we can to help them to get it. Is a time frame? What's the time frame as far as them getting Kelly, what is the timeframe that getting this thing submitted or whatever?
Well, it's all been submitted, it's just the fact that now we're in the midst of conversation with IEMA, so it wasn't, their stuff has already been submitted. So, they've already went through all the submittal process.
You said about a 60-day window, and
Yeah.
she was pushing or something.
It was just now that I had to be in the conversation. So now that I've already made that phone call and I've been in the conversation,
Okay.
it's all, the 60 days is for good.
Okay.
Drew?
It's just that, it's the resolution, once that gets done and signed and all the good stuff, all that gets taken care of, then I'll upload that, showing, and that's what they're needing. So,
Drew, could you tell me how the mechanics of this resolution would work? In that another, say, ministerial alliance, who's fed people, will they have any kind of claim come back? Because it sounded to me that this resolution will mandate.
You make a good point in the fact that Hands of Hope is not the only organization out there that's doing this type of work. And it could potentially be looked on negatively on the county that we selected one organization as opposed to another, which is part of the issue that I have with doing a resolution retroactively. The way the resolution would basically work is the whereas clauses at the beginning, as you're familiar with, would talk about how there's basically a national emergency. The state of Illinois has declared the emergency. It would have the dates. It would say, whereas clause, that the county has a legal responsibility to feed the public, that Hands of Hope is an organization that's been doing this for a long, long time, located here within the county, and so that we've, tasked them during the entire course of the mandate or the entire course of the pandemic, to provide this service to the public. As far as, let's say there's another, say, church group or organization that, wants to come forward and do that, I don't necessarily think that they have a claim against the county as far as any type of discriminatory practice that this board has taken. I think that's going to be a little bit more of a public perception issue that the board would have to deal with.
I thought you said, what you say earlier, I thought you said that, I'm not putting words in my mouth, I don't know exactly what you said, but something about, you said that this would also be used for any other organizations similar to them. Is this going to be one ordinance that could be used for everybody similar to them? I mean,
can we do it that way since this is in the
One
emergency operation
blanket?
plan? And because we have resolutions in the emergency operation plan for other places, like, for instance, I have mutual aid agreements with tow truck drivers, with different towing agencies. And gosh, I have different, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We have one with Condini's, we have one with, who's the other regular service out? The other ones, there's several. Campbell's, and there's another one out. There's 3 or 4 of them, so anyone can sign up.
Yeah, I think it would depend on the language.
do a blanket that covers all these organizations, but not
Well-
that do this, that
And
has to
so-
apply too.
So the way our emergency operation plan reads is anyone that's in our resource guide that's located in the emergency operations, in our EOC, it's located in the EOC, is part of the EOP, emergency operation plan, sorry. Yeah, I guess.
So I guess the question would depend on, is there a document somewhere that lists Hands of Hope as one of those organizations?
Yes, there is a document.
Because
Yes.
I would never speak for any FEMA or IEMA or anybody else, but the one thing that he did make clear is that the county has to task that organization to do it. And so a blanket one, I don't necessarily think would work in general. It may, but we would have to provide that secondary layer of documentation to show the link specifically to this organization.
So my question is, how many places like Hands of Hope are there in Livingston County?
That's a
I
good
would,
question.
I think, okay, besides
There's
Hands
a
of
lot.
Hope, I know, the Lighthouse Shelter.
Okay, so let me make this clear though. If you remember Troy saying at the very beginning that I sent all of that PA stuff out to everyone, and that I did my due diligence, and he said that she absolutely helped in everything that she could at the very beginning, and there was not anything else I could do. I sent to all of them.
What was
So-
the
the public assistance.
So you've,
So-
you've reached out and given the
Absolutely.
opportunity to every organization.
Absolutely.
Hans
All-
Book's just the only one that's latched on and
That's
said, all right,
right.
we're gonna do it.
That's right. So all of them knew, even the city of Marion knew. So, all of the shelters, all of them that come and get food all the time, every one of them, I have a mass email list, and I send them all of the PA information.
Okay, that's my question now. When you talk about the city of Marion, okay, we've always been under the assumption that we only deal with or have authority in the unincorporated areas. Okay, now, if the city has their own plan. Does that?
That's correct, but during this pandemic,
Uh-huh.
the city decided that they wanted to leave all of that on me. So I took care of all the PPE distribution, I took care of all of the information, all of it. So I helped with all of that. So all of the PPE distribution, all of the food, all of that came through us.
Is that the same for Heron and Cardigan?
That's my understanding in this particular case, is that the city of Heron is either unwilling or unable, which is more what it sounds like the latter, to be able to help facilitate and, go with them step by step.
I even tried to do away with all the local jurisdictions, like all the local city jurisdictions this year. And they decided to hold off one more go around.
What's the, to what end is that? Is that so they only deal with the county and that's it? So
I would say this will
entity-
be the last.
So from now on, they'll deal with only the county?
So then my question then is, okay, I know this year may be different, but in years to come, if any of these add to, or generate an automatic audit due to the grant coming through the county, now that would be paid for out of our general fund. So do we put something in that would be either shared, or the cost of that would be picked up by the organization, or?
Well, if it was one of the cities, that just because I sent them the PA information doesn't mean that they would go through us. Because the city of Marion still had their own public assistance information. They still did their own public assistance. If it was like one of the within the city jurisdiction, one of their feeding sources, I would send them to the city EMA, and that's where they would go through, because they have their own public assistance.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them through ours. I would only do the ones that are unincorporated.
Right.
And Hands of Hope is in an
That's
unincorporated
correct.
area. They're not inside Heron city limits?
Well, the city of Heron adopted our EOP. So the only one that doesn't adopt ours is the city of Marion, because they have their own
Okay.
city EMA,
All right,
and it's accredited.
okay, got it.
The only thing I handle for the city of Marion that the city EMA did not do is the PPE distribution and the food distribution. But they did their own grant. So any money coming in, they wanted to take care of. Any work going out, they didn't do. There's no other way of putting it.
That sounds rather convenient.
Yeah,
So-
pretty convenient.
So then, let's just maybe make a checklist here. The pros, obviously, hopefully they would get their grant. Hopefully it would go towards helping feed people that need the food.
Sure.
The downside would be possible kickoff, an automatic audit.
Sure.
Now, I'm just talking about only the ones that are
Sure.
are EOP. I'm adopted. So what would be any other downside?
Well, the downside is, that downside you mentioned is also mitigated by the fact that they could be denied. And if they're denied, then there's no money coming in,
We don't have to worry about
which we wouldn't worry about the audit, right?
Right.
You're still doing your due diligence
Right,
by, going
right,
through the process.
right.
The other downside too, I guess, is if this gets out, other organizations are gonna want us to do this for them. Potentially creates
Kind
more
of
work.
What you do for one, you do for all.
And I don't,
I don't have a problem doing that, but the problem, she's already sent all of them, so they already know that we're capable of
It's a little
doing
late
it,
for
so.
that one, because it's coming to an end.
Yeah, because this pandemic comes in, but they know that we could do this, so if they come to us with another situation, I have no problem helping them.
Sure, I'm just letting you know that you are setting a
Right.
precedent.
Sure.
So then.
But
it's a good one.
That's the question that I'm asking. how does the board want to handle if it triggers an audit? The cost of the audit,
How much would an audit be
Probably
ballpark?
anywhere from 8 to 10 grand, somewhere in there.
Why would it trigger an audit?
Because
Anything over
there's,
75,000, I think.
no, I think over 750,000.
Let me ask
Would
you this,
trigger an audit.
how did you handle it whenever the derecho hit and we had public assistance then and all the jurisdictions were involved? Was there an audit then? Do you know?
You're talking back in 08?
Yeah,
I wasn't here.
I wasn't here
Les
either,
would
so.
probably know because.
And I don't know what the requirement was back then.
It's the same way, so the public assistance still does the same.
No,
thing.
I mean for auditing.
Oh,
I'd say
okay.
it's the same.
It would still be the same thing.
That's the question that Kim's asking on that.
Because the way public assistance works, it's no different now than it would have been 10 years ago. I mean, whoever signs off on your EOP still has to go through the county. So regardless of what kind of disaster
No, I
it
get
is,
it.
they still have to go through the county.
We'd have to ask him about that,
Regardless.
what the standards were back then.
After this year, everybody's going to be coming through our program.
It was like that regardless, whether it's a pandemic or tornado, derecho, earthquake, it doesn't matter. I mean, they still have to go through the county. That's the whole point of having, the county EMA and everybody signing off on. I mean, it's a federal law. I mean, they just have to. So,
I guess I have a question, if it's okay, and this is more for, I guess, Ashley and Kelly. How does this work? Like, if we submit it and they get approved, they send the check to the county, goes to the treasurer's office, then do we have to create a separate account then to pay them back? Or to
Well,
give the money to them?
It depends, if Celeste is involved, sometimes there's a grant clearing account that
Okay.
we have, that most of those monies go directly into that, and then they're dispersed to whomever or wherever they're supposed to be.
Is
So in
there a
other words, this
specific-
doesn't go into our general fund.
exactly. They won't go into the general fund.
Is there a
That's gotta be-
specific-
That's gotta be like a separate audited account.
Yes.
Right.
So whenever we send in stuff now, depending upon the language, I mean, for example, like those downstate business grant accounts, those had to be opened up in a separate non-interest bearing pass-through account. So the money would come from the state, we would get the money, and then we would then in turn, write the check to the respective business. And then we would, for Celeste's reporting, we had to provide the ledger to show the deposit coming in, the check going out, so that you could show that that had been completed. So it will be dictated upon like what is in the grant, of where we go or how
What,
we
and
distribute it.
I'm just throwing this out there, it's just an idea. What if you attach some sort of handling fee that would accumulate? Because not every year you're gonna reach that $750,000 threshold, but maybe something else from another department might have made you reach it, so that triggers the audit, and not necessarily the grant or another organization. triggering the
I
audit.
can, well, I mean, you could do whatever.
You know what I'm saying?
I know like the Southern Illinois Community Foundation handles grants for like other entities. I mean, I guess they charge like a 2% admin.
That's all I'm
So
saying,
that's,
just maybe like an
that's
admin
part
fee or
of
something.
the language. Now, the question is can we get into the business of doing that on a non-governmental, I mean, we do charge an admin fee to like, probation, but that's kind of an intergovernmental, and we're required by statute to house it because we're the largest, but I don't know if we're allowed to charge a business or another entity or a nonprofit, I mean, with some kind of agreement we could have with fee. That's a great question.
At the last meeting, when I gave my opinion on what we should do with the position that Celeste currently holds, I said that, look, one of the reasons we need somebody like that is because she's an expert, right? I don't know much of anything about grants. Just as if, Ms. Norris here was answering a ton of questions. You can tell she's extremely knowledgeable, more than probably anybody sitting up here about this specific issue. I guess my question is on this grant. I've never dealt with writing a grant or anything like that, so sorry for the ignorant question. Who writes the language in the grant? Does it come from up high, or are we writing that language? I guess the
It
reason,
comes from on high.
Yeah.
so can we dictate to them how we want their money spent? my question is, like, it was thrown out there, like, well, can we charge a handling fee, or can we say, hey, you have to cover the expense of the audit? Well, they do that with part of that grant funding, but if On High is the one that's writing the language dictating what they can do with the money, we probably can't tell them what to do.
Well, but I think you could have a separate agreement. I mean, most of these entities, I mean, have other funds coming in.
Okay.
So perhaps like within their budget, they could say, okay, we can pay for it out of
This,
this,
other account.
You know,
Okay.
and it wouldn't necessarily be pertaining. I know, we just, okay, so we just opened up, or we received a grant from the AIOC for the access to justice.
Okay.
So like, they sent us the information to be able to see what the requirements were. Like, we had a chief judge's trust, luckily, that I was able to put that money into.
Mhm.
So that's technically in the gen fund, but there was no specifications as to the money that whether, you know, had to be standalone or if it could be commingled, if it could be interest bearing or not interest bearing. Usually those grants have that information. And then, like I say, that downstate business grant one, for example, like Celeste had, in the language of the grant, it said that, you know, it was the specific amounts to be given, that they had to be like a pass-through type of an account. They could not be commingled with any other funds.
Mm.
So I couldn't make it a trust, I had to make it a standalone.
Okay.
And for that particular one, it said it had to be non-interest bearing. Because basically they're giving the exact amount had to come in, the exact amount had to go out. When all those are done, the account's closed.
Gotcha.
So now with this one, if it's a reoccurring one, they may say, yeah, you can keep it open and it could be interest bearing and all that. And possibly you may be able to use those funds for administrative fees in addition to supply purchases, but that's usually laid out in the grant. It's kind of like a bond, you know, whenever we refinance the bond,
Mhm.
you know, the admin costs and all that was actually included in the bond total. So you had your amount, this much was for the bond, this much was for, you know, fees, this much for admin, you know, and all that. So I think it would be laid out from them, but
I'm pretty sure you can, but I'll have to-
there, it'll dictate it.
I'm glad we have this guy.
You know, one simple fix, I think, to this whole thing is we just budget for an audit every year, a single audit every year, whether we use it or not.
Yeah.
That would be one
That way it's
fix,
in the budget.
you know.
Now, that gentleman said he'd pay for whatever you had to,
Yeah.
to audit or.
I mean, the audit.
That's
Yeah,
why.
I mean,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah, no,
you know, if
he'd
they
pay
want
whatever.
to enter into some kind of agreement and a partnership, they need to be able to front the cost or cover the costs.
Well, that's why I
that
brought it
are
up.
associated with it. And whether, and again, if you can't use it out of the grant fund, then whatever other operational, you know, receipts they have and take in, that money, in their budget, they can have either the handling fee, if that's allowed, or, you know, the you know, $7,000 to $9,000, $10,000.
These
for a
organizations,
single audit.
do they get donations from people and stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
So they have a certain amount of revenue coming in.
They have other money. So
Did I hear him right, that he would pay for?
Yes, but that's also too on the, that's a double-edged sword, you know, we need to make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
How much pocket?
No, he did say that.
If he has a $75,000 claim and he only gets $10,000 back, I mean, because FEMA will pick and choose what they're gonna pay. He might only get $10,000 back, and it still might trigger your audit.
I'm just saying, if we're on that, you
You know what I
know,
mean?
precipice,
If you
Where-
sat him and said that he's willing to pay for
Right.
that audit, only getting 10,000 back, I guarantee you, he's not gonna be so willing to pay for that audit then. You know what I mean?
The other thing too is when you
You
were
have
doing
some
your,
sort of agreement with him.
your pros and cons checklist, one of the cons I said is that potentially you're setting a precedent.
right,
And all three of you said, oh, it's a precedent you're happy to set. But if 5 of them come to you, are we
Yeah.
gonna front the cost $50,000 to try to do this? I mean, that's your decision, but I guess the point is that unless we have some sort of side agreement set up with the individual entities, it could get expensive for the county.
Well-
I think the audit is just one audit
a one-off.
for everything.
Yeah.
And the 10,000 covers everything.
So normally what they, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what Kim looks at is all the grants and receipts that come in from all the various departments from grants. If that is still total under 750,000, we don't have an audit. If anything over 750, then that's an automatic audit. And so that's what I was saying, if we're at the precipice here, and then this comes through, and that bumps us over that threshold, where now it triggers the automatic audit. You know, it's theirs
We can
triggering.
It's
We
possible,
could
but it
figure
will
out
be
what-
difficult then to try to,
You have to
Over
assign
features
percentages.
We
yeah,
can
that's
assign
what you have to
percentage
do.
for $100.
And you wouldn't know at the beginning of the year when you sign the agreement what the percentage would be.
Right.
Because you don't know how many you're gonna have in that year.
And that's where I
Well, sure,
said,
sure we would.
Yeah,
if
so
we
just
budget
budgeting for it.
for a single audit every year, whether we use it or not, if we don't use it, then it goes back in. It stays in our general fund. And if it's used, then we look at why was it used? Was it something that we, countywide, highway department got $1 million grant, something on the road project? That would true. Okay, so then we're gonna have one each, and it's not because of the hands of hope, you know, true. So, I think at that point, but here again, we probably need to set a policy, some guidelines on that, you know, and that's maybe where we need to.
And it's tough because if I'm sitting in that chair representing an organization like Hands of Hope, and you tell me I may or may not have to front the costs, and I don't know what my percentage is gonna be, and there may be other individuals that are coming in, and I may be submitting a claim for $5,000, but now you're telling me there's the potential for this $10,000 audit. It would be tough. I'm not saying it's not possible. There's a way to set a policy and we can do that, but that would be difficult and arbitrary, and you have to make sure that it's not arbitrary is the problem.
Here might be a solution to this. Okay, so if you took 750, and say you did take 2%, we were able to charge an admin. Okay, that's $15,000.
15,000.
So if you charge a flat 2% to anybody that was
For every dollar.
requested, for every dollar that's received,
Right.
then potentially that could be their quote percentage, because if we collected $750 or $750,000 in grants, no matter if Hands of Hope collected 600,000 and 10 other ones collected the other 150, we would still generate $15,000 of admin fee income.
And that would be
And that
charged to everyone that received the
$15,000
grant?
Yeah, then that $15,000 would then cover the $10,000
That's just a
budgeted
next.
single audit, and then the other monies would just be, in the general fund.
So if we get $300,000 over in the state's attorney's office, 2%, we're gonna have to forward back into general fund or something like that.
Well, that would be, well.
Is that
you're-
your-
Because that's where we're
I'm
getting
saying-
to the
I'm saying a
750,000.
non-governmental entity.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
looking for like
So-
outside.
So not the highway department, not the state attorney's office, not the sheriff's office
Sure.
that's receiving the stuff. This would be like the third party, that they've asked us for, we've signed this partnership. There's no partnership agreements or intergovernmental, with those respective offices, but Hands of Hope, Mary Ministerial Alliance, White House Shelter, whatever, Good Samaritan, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
They all come in and they want to, partner with the county in which they would request and piggyback off of, EMA and our grant people or whatever.
Yeah.
Then those monies that came in would be the 2% that would make up that. So if we got $300,000, then we get $6,000, then that would be where we would have that. If we got another $1 million for the county, with the highway department, we were going to do it anyway.
We're gonna have to do.
We're gonna pay that, but we have $6,000 of the $10,000 that it cost us.
Yeah.
So we're only out for, we collected the other, so that would be a kind of a straight line, equitable, sharing plan that might work and be, would meet the need of everybody.
That would be fair. 2%, 1 3/4%, whatever we decide.
For all outside.
For all
non-governmental.
NGOs.
Yeah, that you would sign these, whatever, title partnerships or whatever. Yeah. That's assuming we could do it.
And if that, we find out as we go down the road, that needs to be adjusted, we make it 3% or whatever, as we try to take an average, of how it's working out.
People that experience it this year.
Yeah, we may not have that many people, do this.
And that's kind of-
Maybe a one-time hit.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an industry standard. We haven't said with SSI, we charge them, 2% as an admin fee, collecting those, with that tax.
Yeah.
For them. So I guess it would be a similar type of thing.
So, where do we go from here then?
So step one, I guess, is we need the resolution, right? So that we can get it submitted with the rest of the stuff that's already submitted and we can get a decision back on them. And then I guess step two is to develop the policy. It sounds like the board is interested in going the way that was just talked about, 2% admin fee for all non-governmental. So it would be setting up that policy. I guess drafting an agreement that we would have the organization sign. And it should be signed prior to our submission. But I guess, I mean, that's the two-step process, I would guess. Unless I'm missing something. So I guess maybe the better question would be directed over here for Ms. Norris. What do you need from me or from the board?
I think just that resolution, so I can show proof that we have some sort of agreement with them. Because I think that's all they need is that proof.
Okay. So I need to get with you, I guess, and we'll, maybe you can show me some of those standard or encompassing resolutions. We can try to get one, maybe try to modify it so that it works for Hands of Hope and
We're going to need to get him to come and sign it.
A mutual aid agreement or something. And he would be here today, but he's doing a huge food feeding mission for today's EMS week, I guess. But they're doing feeding like 400 EMS providers at Parkland.
Does that run through Hands of Hope?
He's doing it, yeah, Hands of Hope does. They're feeding all the first responders this week.
But see, I always thought Hands of Hope was just for those who need fed. I mean,
No, they do a lot of stuff for first responders. They feed homeless and other as well, but they do a lot for the first responders too as well.
Well, I guess when they got the grant money, if they agreed to it, we got the 2%. It's up to them how they want to distribute it.
Sure. Well, and I imagine the higher up folks are probably examining their financials.
And take a look at that.
Yeah.
So.
Because like you said, it's not like a yes or a no. They can pick and choose which expenses to reimburse, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I would suggest getting with Kim and asking her an approximate cost of the single audit, just so we have that number.
Sure.
I think, did we budget for this year because of the highway department? Usually the highway department triggers, because they get some pretty big.
I don't believe if we did, we'd probably run to the highway department and pay it.
Yeah, and that's.
Well, highway department, they would pay it.
And they've gotten quite a few grants.
$700,000 is pretty much a big number to hit on my case.
So then, do we need a motion on this? It's on the agenda to go ahead.
The only proper motion at this time would be to move forward with, drafting a resolution and the policy. At this point, you can't vote on the resolution itself since it's not in front of you.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to move forward with the policy and,
Draft the resolution for Hands of
draft
Hope.
the resolution for the Hands of Hope.
Create the policy for the 2% non-governmental admin fee.
You're saying too much for a motion.
Like he said.
Okay, the motion
Did
is
you make a
for,
motion? I'll second.
yeah, whatever I just said is it, so.
Did you get that?
Yeah, no, there is.
Yeah.
When you have that, I'll second.
Jim Marlowe?
Yeah.
Rick Gentry?
It's that attorney stuff, baby, man, keep on rambling.
I think we've kicked this dead.
There is $8,500 budgeted for a single one.
Yeah, I was thinking it was about 8,000 at least.
Do highway or?
I
I
do
mean,
have,
it just says single audit fees. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 8,500. You did not have that.
So we protect ourselves in case of.
But normally she says in advance, she knows that we're gonna be over that 750 threshold. And so we budget for it for that year. Normally that was the case. But in this instance, I think we just might want to do it every year.
we might want to, but it's
Just
not
have it
much.
there.
I do have one question about these, about these grant funds. Suppose they get all 75,000. Will somebody from wherever the money's coming from come back in and look at how they spent this? And could they determine
It's
they
a
misspent
reimbursement,
it?
so it's already been spent.
Okay, so it's strictly
Yeah,
reimbursement.
all
So
this is,
there's no chance for some government agency to come back and say, no, you gotta give that money back because you didn't use it correctly.
nope, they have to turn in receipts.
Beforehand, we
That's
saw
right, they've already
receipts.
turned in receipts and everything.
We saw that at the last
Yes,
meeting.
they already turned all that in,
Okay.
just
Okay,
like we
so
had, yeah.
I was just, I was thinking about this the other day.
This is money that's already been spent back last year.
Okay, so if we gave them the money, they do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's their
Nobody's
money,
gonna
they've
come
already
back to us
spent
and say,
it.
we gotta have it back. Okay,
And matter of fact, like Andrew said earlier, if you remember him mentioning the $80-something hundred that has been denied, I'm
Mhm.
arguing with him on why it was denied. It was PPE that one of our offices had spent already, bought last year in the last year's budget. They're saying that it was mitigations, it was preparedness stuff, it's masks.
right,
Sanitizer, how can that be, we were preparing for not getting COVID? I'm like, no,
right.
we were wearing masks, so, but it was on, it was qualified, so it's a wording thing, so I'm gonna have to reword some stuff and resend it in and fight it, so it's just part of the game, so it is what it is, so.
I guess I have a question also. The board just voted obviously to do the resolution for, Hands of Hope, and also voted to develop a policy. Are we wanting, since it's already budgeted for the standalone audit, and since the vast majority of the paperwork's already been submitted, are we wanting Hands of Hope to sign something for this policy?
Well, that's
Or
what
is
I
this
said.
policy going to be a in the future type thing?
No, my suggestion was to go ahead and develop this to where he would have to come in and sign it.
Okay.
That's my interpretation.
I would agree with that.
Because he, like I said, he said he would be more than willing to help pay for it.
Sure, sure.
All the costs.
What do you think, Rick? You on board with
What we doing here with this?
All right, well, yeah, just go ahead and get to that. Before we get to that, there's one other thing I was wanting to, I think it was Stephanie sent out an email about the wearing masks downstairs. We were asked about the deputies downstairs.
Yeah, they came up and
A policy, okay. Personally, with me, I know, I don't know if it's a HIPAA violation to ask people if they've been vaccinated or not, but I would say if we either had a sign or if you instruct the security downstairs to say, if you want to take your mask off when you come in, you have to show proof of vaccination. That way you're not asking them, and it's gonna be on them.
You can't do that.
Okay, so let me clarify some
Okay.
stuff for you.
Sure.
I already talked to the health department this morning. So here's your clarification. You can't ask
Okay.
at all. So, it all happens on a local level. CDC is recommending, okay? They can't tell us whether we want them to wear a mask or not. It is up to you on a local level, whether you want them to wear a mask if they come in this building or not. So, with that being said, you can put a sign up at the door saying, wear a mask, that you're not going to enter if you don't want to, if they don't have a mask on, they don't come in.
That's what's currently on the door. It
That's
says
correct.
mask required.
That's correct. However, if somebody walks in and doesn't have a mask on, you're not allowed to ask them. You can't ask if they don't have
Right,
it.
right, I
So-
understand that.
And you can't ask them for the vaccine card either, because that is a HIPAA violation.
Right, I understand.
But if they don't walk in with a mask, you just have to assume that they don't have that. So if you leave it as this, you're just putting everybody at risk, assuming that they've had their vaccine. You see what I'm
Your risk
saying?
of what?
That they've had the vaccine. So,
They're
for
not, they're not,
instance,
they're not gonna tell.
for instance, I've not had the vaccine. So if I don't wear my mask, you're just assuming because of what CDC says that I've had the vaccine.
No, I'm
See what I'm
assuming that my vaccine is going to cover it.
Right.
And that you and I both made an individual choice for our own responsibilities.
But it's not going to cover you, it's just going to make your symptoms lessen.
Are you doing good?
Well,
It doesn't
what
keep
he's
you- it
talking
doesn't
about
prevent you
is
from
still
getting
a
the
choice.
vaccine. It doesn't
That's
prevent you
not-
from getting the
But
virus.
but he's talking about the choice.
Yes, but what I'm saying though is the CDC saying that you don't have to wear a mask if you're in a building, that's not the law. The law is a local thing. So everything happens locally first. So it's up to the local whether you want to have the mask mandate or not. It's not up to the CDC to make that decision for you.
So then,
That's a recommendation.
like what I was gonna say was just have a sign up there. If you don't wanna wear your mask, then you should show proof that you've been vaccinated.
Yeah, those guys the other day jumped off
But
the
you
car.
can't ask them for that proof.
Well, here's what Steve Green's done. His presumption is they will wear a mask unless they can document it. That's what he-
Ask them for that
that's why he's doing all that.
documentation.
That's his exact words.
But in this scenario, you're not asking for it. They're
When you
giving,
put on the
they're
sign on
making the
door saying
choice,
that you have to
they're
show
making
your-
the choice to voluntarily show you.
Am I not correct?
I don't see, I wear mine anyway, if I don't even care.
I called right before this meeting, I called the director for my county and
Yeah.
said, if we put a sign on the door saying that you can enter with no mask if you show your vaccine card, he said, then you're violating HIPAA. He said, you cannot
I'm not gonna
ask,
be violating no rules.
you cannot ask.
Right.
Well, presiding judge told me I don't have to wear my mask, I'm not wearing a mask.
He said, you have to assume that if they walk in the door and they don't have a mask on, you have to assume that they had the vaccine.
I think we need to let you research this and see what would constitute.
But if you read on there, it tells you that.
Of course you can.
Well, and there's also the difference too, unfortunately, what we're doing is we're arguing semantics.
Sure.
Everybody has a different definition for the exact same word is the game that we're playing. And the problem you have is if someone shows their card and they voluntarily show it, that's different than you asking to see somebody's card and them having to provide it, right? There's the issue. The other issues you run into here is it's not a right to not have to wear a mask. That's not a fundamental right that people have. And so requiring to show documentation for that, what you're doing is you're basically making your COVID vaccination card like your driver's license, right? You can't operate a motor vehicle on the public street unless you have a driver's license. That gives you the privilege to do that. So what they're trying to do here is local officials, CDC maybe, are trying to say that you have to have a license in your COVID vaccination card in order to not do something. And so the question is, if you're not doing something, is that a privilege? Not wearing a mask versus doing something, operating a motor vehicle. There were multiple orders, I'm sure as everybody was aware. As soon as the CDC came out with the recommendation, the immediate order was that we were done with masks, at least in the courthouse. There's also maybe another question here on who holds the ultimate authority, and are the two buildings going to have separate requirements? That's maybe something to look at too. If the presiding judge disagrees with the county board, what happens there? So there's more to this than can you ask somebody to show the vaccination card. I think it's pretty clear you can't ask people to see the card. and I'm trying to explain this without giving my personal feelings. My personal feelings are in line with Commissioner Atkinson there on the end, is that it's a personal choice. The CDC at first said that you wear masks, right? Not to keep you from getting it, but to protect other people. Now, supposedly we have a vaccine that protects me. So if I'm wearing a mask, it's weird because it's like the mask is a one-way street, an in but not an out. You know what I'm saying? That's it. At the end of the day, I'm happy to do some research on it. I'm happy to make some phone calls. I'm happy to try to come up with a solution that everybody is happy with. If you leave the sign on the door right now, it says masks required, which means that you have to have masks. It's also different because you're a governmental entity, right? For example, let's say we were the Casey's General Store. Doesn't matter a hill of beans what the local government says or what the CDC says. Our private business can require you to wear a mask to, be a patron inside. But since we're a governmental entity, it may be a little bit different.
What's everybody else doing? Anybody check? Franklin County, Jackson County?
I haven't checked, but I can make those phone calls.
I mean, if I'm walking here to do business, I really don't give a shit about showing any car. I'm gonna keep my mask on, do my business, and get out, forget it. I don't see what the big deal is. It just blows my mind for 2-3 minutes, for the thing in and walk out.
Yeah, there's also a different, do you have a separate policy for the public versus your employees,
That's gonna be your other deal.
right?
I mean, for right now, like, if my employees are out in the lobby areas, I tell them to get a mask.
Sure.
But, I mean, if I'm walking through the back hallway, I'm vaccinated.
I agree with that.
I'm not terrible, but I mean, and I talked with Jeff. I mean, he actually crafted his sign to read the language, further guidelines. If you guys are vaccinated, the masks are required, and so otherwise, please enter with a mask. And that's how his employees are. So that's what it
So then maybe we want to wait to see what you come back with a little bit before we decide to do anything, or not do anything at all. I mean, just leave it as is.
Yeah,
I would say, let's see what he has to say. We could get new mandates coming down.
I don't think it's a bad idea to ask what other counties do.
No, I think it's
But,
good.
and it sounds like there was I think that
Today's the day.
the health officials made some comment that they would be issuing new directives and
I think today or
guidelines. So maybe it'll all resolve itself.
And we're supposed to have new mandates coming down from the governor anyway, the 1st of June. But it says on here, if you read the second paragraph, there's different guidance for, even for the jail itself, obviously, it's gonna have different guidance, but, I mean, there's different guidance for other facilities alone. So,
Imagine what your thoughts, you're off floor down there. You're around the hot zone, so.
Well, I mean, some of the abstractors are already not wearing masks in there.
Some what?
The abstractors that
Oh.
come in that common area there, and I don't
That's-
know,
that's
I'm
okay with
guessing that they just walking through and.
That's okay with you, it's your office.
I feel like if, it's your choice. That's how I feel, so.
we'll see what the governor has to say also. That'll tell a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just wait to hear back.
Yeah, it's good.
Just leave
Just
leave it as is,
as is for now.
leave it as is till we hear back.
Yeah, we have no basis to change it right now.
All right, the reason why I gave everybody a copy of the liquor license is a couple of different reasons.
We have a party?
Yeah. And we're trying to figure out which one we need. I had a phone call from Michelle Hamilton. She's, I guess, I don't know if she's the president of the Elks or whatever, but the Elks always come to us for special event licenses, whether they have some sort of drinking event out there at their property at Lake of Egypt, or the firework thing, whatever, every year. They have plans on building some sort of building to where they're gonna make it into like an event center to where they can have weddings and stuff like that, receptions out there. And at times, we all know it's been a hassle for them to come and get this license in time when new presidents take over, they're not familiar with the different policies and maybe we're close to an event and they forget to let us know in time. Well, and then that's got to come before the board to vote on. So then we got to abide by Open Meetings Act. So the timeline to get everything accomplished sometimes is a hassle. And if they have this event center, they may be having events there quite often. So in the past, they've always come to pay $250 for a special event license. They were wanting to know, is there something that would qualify to where they could just pay a one-time fee, a yearly fee, like everybody else, and to where they could have these events? If we have something, or do we need to make this something special? Now, I was looking at this, and I'm thinking the Class E would fit that category for them. I just want to make sure everybody read this and see if that would work for them. The Class E is $1,100 instead of the Class A that everybody gets, or would they want to go ahead with the Class A?
This came up years ago. Zach Sanders came up years ago. I believe it's E because it talks about the different organizations do it, and it says retail of alcohol, liquors, including beer. I mean, unless they're getting into the hard liquor and stuff, organizations for gas consumption. And but that also, you can also take that as being inside their building.
Right.
So
Well, they can do hard liquor with E. It says sale of alcoholic liquors,
but I think
including beer.
I think what that is, because I may be way off base, but I think because they broke it down, I think that's the organization, the building itself. So that means you can go, which I'm an Elks member, if they want to go in there, they can sell all this stuff. Okay, so I believe that E, Drew, if I'm way off key here, tell me about, I believe E is for their establishment.
So G looks like.
Unless you want to,
No, I think they got an A right now.
unless you want to come off with this and.
We don't have
Well, we don't have it, because they're in the city.
Their city, yeah.
You could, I guess you could amend it, make it, you know,
Well, that's why I'm bringing this up.
it could be an E amendment, I don't know.
The only thing that bothers me on this one is the very last sentence, to be carried from and consumed off the said premises. That's just like any other drive-up facility, bar, or any place like that. Okay, now, to me, if that was off, everything else would be okay. It's just, so that's why I'm bringing it up, maybe for our crack assistant state's attorney.
Well, the last sentence in A and E are basically the same, right?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Correct.
But
It gives the patron the ability to take it off premises.
Seal unbroken, that way, so you're.
Sell it to take home, buy
Right.
6 pack.
Yeah, you buy 6-pack for about.
The issue, the discrepancy I see is in G, it specifies a limited amount of time. So G is something like, hey, we're gonna have 4th of July celebration, we just need it for this 1 or 2 days or for this event. G is appropriate.
Right.
The problem is E doesn't distinguish a certain amount of time, and in my course reading of A, it doesn't either. Because it sounds like if they're gonna have this establishment, they're gonna wanna do this on a perpetual basis.
Correct, they want to pay a yearly fee.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about coming in all the time.
You either have to put an addendum upon one of these to make that
Or
happen.
do we want to create,
Or you want
say,
to
like,
create-
Well, I think they're saving
caterer type,
$250 between A and E.
caterer type license?
Essentially, it's $250 difference between the two.
And I assume they realize that since they're doing it for more than one event, that their cost is gonna substantially increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't built this building yet,
Okay.
but what they're trying to do is, once again, budget for it and know in advance. So that's why I brought it up. Right now, they're getting a special event license for whatever event.
But it looks like to me, they would have to have some premises down at the lake in order to qualify for it.
Well, they've got to,
They'll have to build something
Build something.
or move something in,
Correct.
some kind of permit or semi-permit.
I guess they have to get permission by, like, people.
We'll have to,
Owners or whatever.
well, they own that property down there, they may be able to construct as they need to on that property.
Well, the only difference between A and E, that E specifically mentions
Charitable.
charitable organizations and veterans groups.
And the price.
And so they're getting a little bit of a discount. They're getting $250 off
$250.
because but other than that, it's basically the same. Okay. If you're going to amend it in the future, I'd put some language in there that talks about the amount of time that license is good for a year as opposed to a
We're talking
specific
about E.
A and E. Yeah.
Well, A's already got it. It's a year. It has on the license itself, an expiration date.
Okay, it's just not in this definition.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
They all expire, what is it, June 30?
Mhm.
June
So-
30. They're good for July 1 through June
Through
30.
June
Yeah,
30th of next year.
Everything.
Everything except for F and G, and those
Yeah.
are on event basis. Okay.
So I have another question. Here it says number issued. So are we at our limit on that? Do we have to change that?
We can change it.
Right.
We don't leave them lay out there so somebody comes along, bad deal,
Right.
address it, so we can change it.
So I mean, we may need to add one.
Yeah,
If
and it's
they
not a
so
problem.
chose to
Yeah,
do
we
that.
vote
So-
on it.
Well, if they go A or E, I mean, there's 15 and 5. Is that how many you currently have out?
This isn't correct. This is back from 2014, so this isn't the correct ordinance.
Okay.
Oh,
But I
okay.
do have the correct ordinance in there. I think it's 19 right now.
19.
19 Class A?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with all these gaming places that have showed up, I know they have to have alcohol sales, beer
I
sales.
believe so, to be able to get their gaming license.
Yeah, they all have. that.
Well, we got time on it, just work, add that to your list there.
Well,
You don't have anything else to do?
All
Make- you
righty
might-
then.
You need another sheet of paper?
Right?
Now I'm gonna go on my comments and everything for you. So I sent you an email, I see that your email doesn't work, so I'll just read your email.
Well, if it,
Well, you've
I still
still
have
got
one more
one
thing
more
about the
about the
liquor license.
So it's about liquor license, go ahead. Maybe- I mean, let's just-
Okay.
think the same thing, I don't know.
I've got another phone call. A guy wants to start a distillery.
This is it.
Same thing?
Yeah, I just, still, we just read through the whole thing here. A gentleman's wanting to open a distillery making whiskey and moonshine. He wanted to know if there were any ordinance against it, question mark. I look at it as making wine, my opinion. He has spoken to the state, he has to get a TTB, license number, which he's already do, and a craft distillery license. I
It's
told him
good.
that we talked to you about this.
It's
Yeah,
a vendor one too.
I mean, off the
Yeah.
top of my head, your liquor ordinance here talks specifically, it lists the type of liquors. It says wine and beer in here. I would argue then, based on the current language here, that, moonshine or whiskey is different from beer and wine.
But you can add that in, Barbara.
You could amend your
But now,
ordinance,
this guy
yes.
is not going to sell it at his establishment. What he wants to do
Sure.
is manufacture it and then distribute it to various entities around. Now, we have one a while back at Katie Lynn Winery. He was distilling brandy out of leftover wine, but that wasn't to be, because of the stipulations from the state, he couldn't distribute it. It has to be consumed right there at his winery. They can't buy it, take it home.
Sure.
So we didn't do anything about that. We just said, that's not a problem. It's not gonna be a moneymaker for us or anything like that. Just go ahead. But this is a little different. This one, he wants to manufacture whiskey, and he wants to distribute it.
Keep the barrels for quite some time.
No retail sale, right?
No
Just
retail sales,
distribution.
just
Okay.
right, just distribution. So it's a little different.
Okay.
And that's why I think IW is probably just amend that to add the language, because if it's give it the state, it's give it the federal, then I don't.
Yeah, they're gonna be the bigger hurdles that individual is gonna have to deal with is the federal and state. You can amend this to include that. Most of your liquor license here, it looks like deals with retail sale. But we can either amend a certain
That
section
email's
or
for
add a
you when your
section.
computer gets up, so it's already there.
But
What about the one, I know it's a neighboring county, but what about the one on 51, north of, what is that, DeSoto there?
So a brewery, I think.
That they're a brewery?
Right.
Okay.
See, we really don't have any microbreweries here in Williamson County.
And he probably talked to me, he didn't seem like a little big. He didn't
Yeah.
seem like the enormous thing.
But
Just basically wanted to know, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, are there
I'm
any
thinking-
huge hurdles?
I'm thinking
that
about
have in
doing
the
it.
county? Yeah.
what question that, of course, I was talking to Stephanie about, I guess what we need to find out is who would inspect these things. Because we're not, to make sure that they're kept clean,
Yeah.
because we're not set up to do that.
Well, I think
Something
that-
else I can look into, but my guess is that that's at the state level.
Well, he said it's the part of that, what I was reading.
We have 5-6, the brewery place, the microbrewery there in that mall. That restaurant next to,
Oh, 618.
Yeah.
The TTD
That's through the city.
License,
That's
part of that, where they, it's engraved in
Yeah,
bronze,
that's the city.
and TTB will, the state will come inspect it.
Do you know that there's a craft store at the end of where 618 is that sells art crafts and stuff? Do you know they got a liquor license?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Wait a minute,
And
it's
I-
a regular crafts?
Uh-huh,
Yeah,
crafts. And I
they
asked,
sit in
the
there,
lady
they
called
drink
me
the
about it.
wine.
And I said, you know, liquor license, she goes, we like the
You
ladies
get
here like to
hoops,
partake in wine and
wow.
Jeff, just go in there and get hooch and make it.
I guess, yeah.
Go in there and macrame yourself and check in and have a bottle of wine.
You little
Maybe
pot-
I'm pro too, I got it down, I can.
Do a little pottery back in the back, Jeff, you'll be looking good.
Could we maybe look at some tentaves tomorrow afternoon, on board review?
yeah. I think we're supposed
So we're
to.
almost filled up with hearings for the next 2 days, so we need to look at the rest of those tentatives. So if we can, let's try to. meet
Tomorrow afternoon,
Tomorrow afternoon, if we
like
can.
at 1 o'clock or
Yeah,
something.
we can decide, yeah.
All right, just
Take a break,
send
come
me a
back.
message.
I, you talked about that, I got a little bit of conflict department tomorrow.
Okay.
I got to speak at 11:20 with Blaze, and then I got my eye in the afternoon, we looked at with blood.
No, sir. I see
One,
it.
so I'm,
One or.
but I can.
Whatever
finish it
you got,
with you.
whatever we decide tomorrow.
Whatever
Just-
time.
just Whatever we can get back and get going.
You can still roll through them and I'll look at them later. All right,
They're
we'll-
tentatives anyway, and we can take a look.
I'll look at them
So,
to you, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm not gonna,
Just kind of, all right.
I won't disagree with it anyway.
So you guys want an email to that effect?
We're done.
No, I got it in here.
You got it?
Done with you? No, we got another 20 minutes for you.
Lunch is covered.
Around the corner.
All right, so, so that's all I was wanting to bring up. On another note, to let you guys know, we had that conference call with, the IOC. We had, Mr. Malkovich here, we had Mr. Peebles here, and Andrew and me. We went through all the questions, including ones that were submitted late, through Brent's email. Everything was asked. Everybody had the opportunity to get specifics. Correct me, Drew, if I'm wrong, but the specific reasons why that audit was rejected was because, number one, it was done on a cash basis versus an accrual basis. Secondly, I think, which was another big reason, was that it didn't include the pension funds. There was a couple other funds that it did not include.
Yeah, so we got some clarification, and Tom Malkovich, who was literally sitting right here, probably asked more questions than anybody, the attorney for the PBC, and wanted to really nail down why 18 was good and 19 wasn't. And we ran into a couple of roadblocks where the IOC was hesitant to give us a specific answer because it would constitute a legal opinion, and they're not in the business of doing that. Their job was simply to answer a question, if they could, as to what was wrong with the audit, what we need to do going forward. And those were the two issues that were wrong with the PVC information. The other thing, which kind of raised a red flag, was the fact that the information wasn't submitted with the Williamson County information all at once, like it had been in years past from, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So that kind of raised a red flag. And then when the information was submitted in February,
No, they said that it did. That's one of the questions that was answered, yes. They received them both.
yeah, so they said they received the information. However, there was a problem. The information that they received was essentially, one, incomplete, because it didn't include some of the pension funds and other things, but two, it didn't meet the statutory guidelines, meaning it didn't meet the generally accepted accounting and auditing principles, specifically the cash basis versus the accrual. What the best course of action, so we asked all the questions, tried to get a clear picture of exactly what happened. We did ask, what would you recommend going forward? They didn't answer that question. However, they did confirm that the audit was done, it was submitted, there was problems with it. At this point, this board can't force, Mr. Malkovich is correct, we can't force an audit. We can't have Kim Meyer do the 2019 audit because they did an audit. It was just wrong. So at this point, what has to happen is the individual that did the audit, in this case, Mr. Snyder, Dean Snyder, has the opportunity to correct or to fix the audit. And he needs to work with Kim Meyer, not because Kim has been engaged to do the 2019 audit, but because she's the one that ultimately submits the Williamson County audit, the overall thing, and they have to align. The standards have to be the same. Essentially what happened is the stuff that was submitted by the PBC was in Fahrenheit, and the stuff that was submitted by Kim for the county was in Celsius. And in the accounting and auditing world, you can't have that. Everything has to match. So we developed a plan where the two of them would work together, where Dean would convert his stuff to match the rest of the stuff for the county, and then it could get resubmitted in time. We also got some clarification on the statute. We had two statutes that were kind of conflicting. One of them said the county can force an audit, but the other one said that the PBC has the authority to choose their own auditor. Well, both of those are kind of correct. The PBC has the authority to choose any auditor they want, anybody at all, to do their audit. And they have until the deadline that's set by the IOC, this year happened to be May 28th, to get that audit to the county. If they fail to do so by the deadline, at 12:01 a.m. the next day, this board can then force an audit on the PBC that the PBC would have to pay for. However, this board doesn't have the power to do that until they fail, in their own actions. For 2020, so the 2019 audit, Dean is working to revise, make sure everything is meshing together. We'll submit it to Kim. If Kim has questions, they'll get back. One of the things we kind of maybe learned was that maybe there was a little bit of a lack of communication. So
It just could have been done 3 months ago, there's no communication.
sure. So we're trying to
Sorry.
facilitate, without pointing fingers, what we're trying to do is facilitate this getting done and moving forward so that we become in compliance.
So in moving forward, Kim has forwarded me a punch list that I forwarded to Doug Peebles. Doug is sending it not only to Dean, but to Pat Barwick, because basically what she needs on that punch list to make everything compatible is financial information, which is held by their accountant, Pat Barwick, not Barwick, Barwick. Yeah, and we are not Pat's client, so that request has to come from one of their clients, which Doug Peebles is now the chairman, and so that's why we gave it to Doug. But Doug also forwarded it to Dean as well, and so they're working on that. As soon as we get that, then that'll be all submitted.
For the 2020, we've requested and have been granted an extension from the May 28th to the new date is, the 60 days is July 28th, to have our audit in. Talking with Mr. Peebles and the board, and also having spoken with Kim, I am under the belief that they are going to find a way to get that done on time. If the PBC has hired Dean Snyder to do the 2020 audit for the PBC, which would then be turned over to Kim to be included with the entire Williamson County audit. If they fail to do that by July 28th, on July 29th, you guys could hold a special meeting and you guys then could force the audit to be done. In my opinion, my legal opinion, it would be in your best interest to do that as quickly as possible, not to exert power over the PBC, but to ensure that the audit gets done and we're not in a situation where we become non-compliant under the IOC. Something else that was confirmed in the meeting, one of the questions I did ask was, are we being threatened right now with you coming down and taking over and just doing the entire audit? And while they acknowledge that they have the power to do that, they typically only do that in the most extreme cases. in Williamson County's case, we've kind of taken the initiative saying, look, we know there's a problem, we want to fix it, we want to work with you. And because of that, they've seen that we're being cooperative. We're not on the list to have them come down and do that. What typically would happen, the procedure from the IOC is they would give you a final deadline. If you don't meet that final deadline, then they would come down. It's kind of like a drop dead date. There is no drop dead date that has been set for the 2019 audit for Williamson County. In fact, there is no deadline or date that has been set at all by the IOC for anything to be turned in. I also did confirm that we can submit the 2020 audit before we correct the 2019 audit if we need to for time purposes. We don't want to be late on 2020 just because we were working on 2019. I think that's the majority.
Well,
Oh.
the one thing is whether you're in attorney field or you're in county field, whatever, egos have to be set aside. And they have to talk to each other, and they need to know there's a drop dead date of X, Y, Z that I need this information by, and it'll be there. There was no communication.
No.
This could have been done months ago.
Sure.
Okay, so that's why we're predicting that you have to work together. If you can't work together, we need to be drastic changes. And so the one question I've got is, two questions, is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 were not done on time and were not completed, but they were okayed by the comptroller's office. How is that possible?
Well, and I think I kind of responded to this question, I think last week in an email, which was, unfortunately, I don't have that knowledge. I don't know. What we do know is the IOC said that the 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 ones, were completed. To address your other point really quickly about communication and time, two things. One, Tom Malkovich, the attorney for the PBC, specifically said, if this is a situation where Dean is unwilling, unable to work with Kim Meyer, or unable or unwilling to complete the audit by the standards, then the PBC needs to fire him and hire somebody that can.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, absolutely. The other thing too is to ensure that, they need somebody watching over them, both of them, to make sure that they're actually doing the work, instead of us waiting until July and then finding out, hey, they never spoke and nothing's wrong. So we've set a tentative June 15th date, giving them approximately a month to try to get this done. And then we're setting a status conference, again, get back together, Mr. Peebles, Tom, myself, anybody who wants to join in. But just basically to check the status, have a status meeting. Where are you guys at? Is this done? Are you almost done? Do you still need this? What have you done? What have you not done? In an effort to try to perpetuate this along.
Seeing how you're the attorney, okay? I think you need not these paper here. But seeing you're the attorney, is there a way that if they do speak to each other, obviously they're not going to talk to each other on the phone, they're going to do correspondence of emails, whatever. Can you be copied in that so there is communication going on?
Sure, yeah, we didn't ask that, but I'm sure.
I said this, he said, she said.
I didn't specifically talk to Dean. I have spoken with Kim. I'm sure that won't be a problem. And I'm happy to do that. And I'm also happy too, once I have that information so that I know something's happening, I'm more than willing, I want to be transparent in this process. I'm willing to disseminate and share that with the three of you.
Right. Absolutely. And the other situation is now we've got a vote for an audit to be done like a month or so ago.
Yes.
That has to be rescinded or something?
No, it doesn't. So you did have the vote for the motion for them to do the 19 and for Kim's from Hudgens and Meyer to do the 19 and the 20 audit. The resolution was a little premature, and this is my fault. I should have advised you on this that it was premature. I didn't do that, and that rests on me. The 2020 is premature. We don't have an engagement letter. Well, I guess we do have the engagement letter. It has not been executed.
No, she's not.
She hasn't sent it?
You have a vote on record.
Either way, we
Just
have a
the
vote
vote
on
is
record,
all.
but we don't have the engagement letter to execute your
She
motion.
never signed in.
And so it's on hold basically right now. The 19 won't happen. It can't happen because an audit was done. Kim is working with Dean, not in her capacity as taking over and doing the audit, but in her capacity as the Williamson County auditor to try to get 19 done. 20, you guys have passed the motion and it's the pause button's been basically set. if the PBC gets their audit done and submitted to us and everything's fine, it just goes away. We never sign the engagement letter. It's done. Don't need to rescind anything. If July 28th comes and goes and the PBC doesn't do it, you sign the engagement letter, you've already voted on it, and then Kim steps in, or whoever you guys choose to do, steps in and does the 2020 audit for the PBC.
I think the meeting went very well. Mr. Malkovich, I made sure he had everything answered.
He's a nice guy.
Doug, made sure Doug had everything answered. I think we covered all bases. Andrew was on the phone with me. We called Kim to discuss what the procedures that we come up with, our plan. She said she was more than happy to work with Dean. It was recommended that we come up with that punch list, because right now it's just some fill in the gaps of information. That's all it is, to make their audit compliant as an accrual basis.
And I don't know a lot about, this is not my field. I don't know a lot about accounting and auditing. I mean, I can do my own budget at home, but from my understanding, there's two forms, and they're probably multi-page forms, but there's two forms. One of them was the pension and one of them something else that need to be done. And then on the other stuff, the numbers just need to be converted, from red to green, from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And while that conversion is difficult, it's not just like, hey, multiply by 3.2 and you got your numbers. You have to go through everything, specifically the retirement accounts, make it kind of a pain to do, but it's possible to do. And you're right. This could have been done a long time ago if there would have been the communication.
I CC'd you on the punch list, I believe, that I sent to Doug Peebles.
Okay.
And so when you get your computer, you'll
You get
see
your
that.
computer up, you're
I'm
going.
hoping either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, I'm gonna have a bunch of nice list of stuff for everybody.
In an overly simplified way to explain the difference when we're talking about converting between the two systems, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but cash basis operates on what you have on hand at any given time. It's like a slice of time, what cash you have, what bills you've paid. Where an accrual, you look at the funds that are going to be coming to you. So like when we budget we haven't received all of our sales tax or income tax, but yet we know we projected what we're going to receive, and that's what an accrual is. It's two different ways of looking at whatever, either your business or your whatever you're auditing.
Like your accounts receivable.
Yeah, and so one is like a slice of time, and this is what we have on hand, this is what our expenses are at this point. It doesn't take into account what your expenses are going to be in the future, doesn't take into account what revenues are coming in the future. So, and that's why the two don't mix. So, but I believe now
They're used for two different things.
they're used for two different,
Yeah.
it's just
Where
two
we are
different
right
looks,
now,
outlooks.
In the future, I'm supposed to get this, but these are my expenditures.
Right.
These are retirement, these are all the things I'm gonna have to pay
Correct.
out, so I'm being accrued,
Right.
accrued, thank you.
So that's why it's not just simple, take
Yes.
these numbers and multiply them by
It's
whatever.
just the two different methods, so. Which,
Cash is good for day-to-day business.
that's what, we had, we were making payments to, US Bank. Sonny was, I'm an old copier, well, last year we made payments to an address, and then when the audit was done, she went and looked at them, she requested a W-9, where we're paying, and it had an old address on there, and she told the county clerk's office to go back to the old address, our auditor. Over the last 3 months, that's not where it should have been. They got a hold of us. So all last year, we sent it to where it was supposed to go. She told them to change it downstairs. Now we can't get the money, and we're trying to work with the bank, and we have to get the account numbers and stuff from there. How hard should we do this, or should we turn it over and let Kim get our money back?
Okay, I'm not sure if I follow you on that.
Okay, so we were making a payment for our copy machine.
Mhm.
For all last year, we were sending it to an address, 1310, so we were sending to this address for payments. She's doing the audit downstairs, and she said, well, so she asked for, I guess, the W-9, which is where companies would be sending payments to, so if they sent the payments, so she said, sent it back to the old address that's on, that the last one they had on file, which was from 14.
Kim said that.
Oh, I'm sorry, 12. Tim told them to change it back, so they did downstairs. We turned the claim in, we don't have where it's going to. When they came back up, we mailed off the checks. And then they sent us a past due slip on the bills. And then found out that the address we were sending it to all last year was the proper address. So they resent us, I don't know if they lost the W-9 from downstairs, but we redid that now. We're just trying to get, how do we get the money back? We tried to call Minolta, they said, well, it's at US Bank. So I guess that's where they handle their stuff. And now they're wanting account numbers and stuff that we don't have access to try to get our money back.
I would suggest, and this is just me, if she told you to change,
She told them downstairs
then I
to
would
change
work
it.
with her and let
So
her.
they're trying to work with them. And that's what I
get on
thought.
that, yeah.
Because I mean, we made a couple calls, but they keep wanting information from us we don't have. And so I thought that, I just want to make sure that's what I'm going to do is just turn and let them, you know, because when the money comes back, it's going to go back in the
These
general
guys
fund
might
anyway.
want something different.
And I just want, that's where I'm at. I'm not going to sit there and keep trying to make phone calls on
Right.
stuff we don't have. So I thought I was just going to turn it over and let her or let them downstairs try to get, you know, it's not a large amount. It's just, I want to make sure you're aware of where we're going to go.
Okay.
So, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Anybody got anything else?
Did you decide on the time for tomorrow?
1 o'clock, that's fine. Yeah.
Anybody got anything else?
Let's close the motion.
You got it? Motion.
Second.
Motion second. Third.
Jim Marlowe.
Yeah.
Brent Gentry.
Yeah.
Tim Atkinson.
Yep.
Fourth.
Has anybody ever voted no on this?
To leave? No.
I think next
I just
time-
did, no.
Next time